So in the last lesson, we had looked at the structure of the glomerulus and the function at each stage. Now, the above was the structure of the glomerulus, and at each stage we are represented by number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 3. Now, at stage 1, there is always ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration is a type of filtration which occurs whereby blood running under a high osmotic pressure is forced out, is filtered under a high osmotic pressure. The osmotic pressure is called hydrostatic pressure and is caused by the difference in the diameter of the arteries. The efferent arteries having a wide diameter filters out, creates a high hydrostatic pressure in the glomerulus, whereas a efferent vessel being more narrower results into generation of a high osmotic pressure within the glomerulus. So that way that the small molecules like glucose, calcium, magnesium, ions, water that are slightly permeable via the capillary walls will move into the capsular space. So in the case of number 1, you did find that glomerular filtration in the glomerulus, blood plasma and dissolved substances smaller than most proteins get filtered into the glomerular capsule and later on can be absorbed via the blood vessels and transported to body tissues. Number 2, we have the tubular reabsorption, and all along the renal tube and collecting duct, water, ions and other substances get reabsorbed from the renal tube into the tubular capillaries and ultimately into the blood. Looking at number 3, we have the tubular secretion. All along the renal tube and collecting duct, substances such as waste drug and excessive ions get secreted from the tubular capillaries into the renal tube. These substances ultimately make their way into the urine. So look at the ureter. The ureter are circular ducts 25 to 30 centimeters long with narrow lumen that carry urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder. They run inferiorly from the apices of the renal pelvis at the hillock of the kidney, passing over the pelvic brim at the bifurcation of the common iliac arteries. They then run along the renal wall of the pelvic and enter the urinary bladder. So we shall look at the ureter abdominal parts. The abdominal parts of the ureters adhere closely to the parietal, peritoneum and the retroperitoneum throughout their course. When examining the ureters radiographically using construct media, the ureters normally demonstrate relative construction in 3 places. First of all, we shall tend to look at the junction of the ureters and the renal pelvises. Number 2, where the ureters cross the brim of the pelvic inlet, and number 3, during their passage through the wall of the urinary bladder. And these constricted areas are potential sites of obstruction by uteric stones, that's all calcium. So we shall then look at blood supply to the ureter's abdominal part. Arterial branches to the abdominal portions of the ureter arise consistently from the renal arteries, with less constant branches arising from the testicular or ovarian arteries, the abdominal arteries and the common iliac arteries. The branches approach the ureters medially and divide into ascending and descending branches, forming a longitudinal anastomosis of the ureteric wall. Veins draining the abdominal part of the ureters drain into the renal and gonadal, testicular or ovarian veins. We shall look at the ureter and pelvic part, or the pelvic part. Earlier on we looked at the blood supply to the ureter, and we knew that the arteries branch into the abdominal portion of the ureter, arise from the renal arteries, with less constant branching arising from the testicular or ovarian arteries, the abdominal aorta, and the common iliac arteries. The branches approach the ureters medially and divide into the ascending and descending branches, forming a longitudinal anastomosis on the ureteric walls. Veins draining the abdominal part of the ureter drain into the renal and the gonadal, testicular or ovarian veins. So we shall look at now the ureter or pelvic part. As the ureter crosses the bifurcation of common iliac artery, these are the keywords we look on the marking, they pass over the pelvic brim, thus leaving the abdomen and entering the lesser pelvis. The pelvic part of the ureters run on the lateral walls of the pelvis, parallel to the anterior margins of the greater sciatic notch between the parietopelvic peritoneum and in the internal iliac arteries. Opposite the ischial spine, they curve atriomedially superior to the levator and enter urinary bladder. The inferior ends of the ureters are surrounded by vesical venous plexus. Members, thank you very much for watching. We love you so much, and stay tuned for more education resources that are coming up. It has been Dr. Derek at your service. Don't miss out. Catch you on the next. We are going to begin from the course in the next lesson. Thank you very much.